Hey, so I just had this 2-hour session with Soshi, who's like a movement coach. And for people who don't know what that is, if you see people doing parkour type stuff or like getting up off the ground, this incredible, complicated movement where you can move in any direction with complete fluidity like a dancer, that's movement. And I've known Soshi for quite a long time, but we've actually never spoken or met like face to face before. And she actually offered to help me in my recovery from this injury that I have. Again, if you guys are just jumping in, I suffered a very, very bad injury from falling off a horse into a cement fence, and I got very severe bruising on my spine, kidney, and on this iliolumbar ligament that comes across your back. And its job is making sure your spine doesn't act like a snake. Like, it kind of keeps you all together. So having damage there made me unable to move at all for a while. I'm 2 weeks out now and I'm moving pretty normally. Like, I can do kind of my day-to-day stuff, but I have to be very careful just going to do something. And then because this ligament's so important, when it comes... Stop.
Okay.
Am I over? Hey, I decided I was geeking out a little bit too much in one direction, whereas my actual geek out is in another direction. So my real geek out is about, in this session talking with Soshi, there were so many elements that basically gave me this, like, in movies when people take the pill and then their brain like starts solving mysteries of the universe, I had this complete realization of all this information coming to me with every single thing we were talking about and then what we were working on in our movements. I was like seeing the Muay Thai library in this like Neo, I know Kung Fu, like just completely seeing everything all new. So I'm gonna like do a little bit of a geek out all these things that were so exciting to me. So one is that so she just had me walk back and forth, and I walked the way I normally do, and she's like, oh wow, that's very stiff. And I'm like, no, that's actually just how I normally walk. And I stare at the ground when I walk, which you shouldn't do in Muay Thai and whatever. She said just lift your eyes to horizon, and even just lifting my eyes to horizon level changed my entire composure. It kind of like relaxed my upper body a little bit. My balance was a little bit different. And the reason this was interesting to me is that, again, at a later part where we were doing movements, I was having a little bit of not trouble with the movement. I was just like doing it the way I could. And then she told me to change where my eyes were and ultimately had me close my eyes. And both those things changed my balance and where I was blowing out lines and things like this. If you guys follow me, you know I talk about not blowing out your frame, being very balanced. Balance is so important in Muay Thai. And eyes being this tiny, tiny thing of where you're looking, having such an impact on that, made me suddenly realize that this question of like, where do fighters look when they're fighting, which people, they don't know where to look. And so they're like, well, where does Yod Kung Pan look? Where does Garat look? Where does Namsak Noi or Diesel Noi look? Because you want to know what they're looking at, so that's what you want to look at. All of those different areas change so much of what your body's able to do that where they look is very, not dependent on, but probably a component of what kind of fighter they are. Where you're looking is totally going to change all these things and how tall you are. So like Diesel Noi being super tall and looking at about this part of someone's body, he's kind of lowering his gaze a little bit, which is going to change his balance. Karahat is more or less my height. He's a little bit taller. I will give him that credit. He needs those inches. He tucks his chin like this and looks up, which ultimately gives him about horizon eye level, which is what changed so much about my composure. Then, as we were going through all these different like movements and motions, I was just getting these, like, I was taking notes because I didn't want to forget. So we did everything, and then I didn't want to forget, and I'm like taking notes. And she's making these examples of like what this is like and what it should feel like, which is totally how one should see those things. I'm like, this is how Samrak does it. This is how Yod Kung Pan does it. This is totally what Samson Hassan's entire thing is. And I could feel it while I was doing it. So I'm going to give you these examples because they made me so happy. So we're doing this thing where you have to have very loose arms. She called them swimmer arms. And you have to just kind of like let them slap against your body as you're kind of rotating like this, right? So I was having a little bit of a hard time because my damage is over here. And so it's stabilizing this part of my body. So I feel a little bit of pain. So to change this for me, she had me bring my feet very close together, kind of push my legs together, and then kind of do the same floppy movement like this. All of a sudden now I'm way more symmetrical with my feet together like this. What did I realize? 3 things came rushing at me from this. This floppy arm thing is literally the movement I make when I'm not making fun of, but joking about Samrak to Kevin. I say that Samrak looks like a bunch of ferrets in a raincoat because he's so loose. If you watch him boxing, when he like comes off of something, he comes off of a kick or a block or something, and then his arm literally flops behind his back like this because he's just that relaxed. This is Samrak like this, right? Yodkun Pan also, when he's teaching the elbows, he's like, if you watch the slow motion capture that Kevin made on YouTube, it's the most beautiful thing. His hands are like butterflies because they're so loose, and he's always telling me when you practice elbows, completely loose, right? He ends up like slicing people, but it's really loose. So these are 2 examples of like super relaxed like this. And then you have someone like Samart, who also super relaxed like this, but how does Samart stand? How does Sylvie always talk about Samart? Looks like he's standing at a bus stop. Samart's stance is about like this. It's super narrow. If Samart went like this and tried to do Mr. Floppy Arms like Sylvie can't do, not the same thing because it's a different stabilizing due to someone's anatomy, which is absolutely incredible. Another thing I never would have thought of by myself. We're doing this complicated movement that I'm not going to try to do on camera because I'm not good at it, but it involves this rounding of the back and coming up, and she's like, really tuck your chin, like this. Who does this? Who does this remind you of? This is Samson Hassan. She's like, you should have a double chin. I'm like, I'm trying to keep spit in my mouth. Like, you're so like this. This is how tucked Samson is. Samson doesn't do this. Samson's tight. He keeps himself protected like this. Chin down like this. I will tell you, you can do this at home. You can try this at home. If you super tuck your chin like this, you actually lift weight off of your diaphragm. You can test it. If you're like this, breathing's super easy. Just lift your chin like this. You can actually feel the weight go back down onto your diaphragm a little bit. What is Samson known for? Samson is known as Bot Yai. He's known as the Energizer Bunny, big lungs, never runs out of power. Like this, you can breathe super easily. Even just like this, you have more weight on your diaphragm and you can't breathe quite as well. Did I just fucking solve every different type of style? And this is why this is so amazing that Muay Thai is so varied and so different. And if you're like, I want to fight like this person, there are so many nuances to why that person moves that way or fights that way or anything like this. Why is Karahat the only person who can do Karahat's kick? There's a golden kick, which is what Karahat's doing, but it's not the Karahat kick. What is Karahat's anatomy and how is the entire thing moving together to make that kick work? This is why you do not, I'm just going to work on this to perfect it. You work on the entire thing. The entire thing is the silhouette. It is the root. We just solved root.